There's some great research lately where a bunch of 70 and 80-year-old retirees were polled and surveyed and asked, what do you regret most about retirement? It's a sad state because we save for so long, we anticipate those golden years, and then only to hit it and it falls short of your expectations. Well, there are 5 key elements and 5 key regrets that many seasoned retirees actually experience. And I promised and I vowed to myself after I saw what my dad went through, what my mother went through, that I was not going to regret these same items and issues that the typical 70 and 80-year-old retirees witness. A lot of actually go through this. This is not uncommon. And I promised myself I would do myself a favor because we have one shot in life, one shot only. And I was going to ensure that I was going to live my life to the fullest, celebrate life for everybody, my family, my friends. We're going to do it the best way that we possibly can because we only have one approach. So with that said, welcome back to the hustle and welcome back to the grind, everybody. We're off to grab our favorite beverage. We're heading there right now. As you can see, it's about -5 right now and we're trending to -30. It's going to be an ugly one, but I'm going to grab my coffee. So let's just get started about some of those key regrets and how I'm actually avoiding them to my absolute best. So one of the regrets is a lot of retirees say that they waited too long. They waited too long to retire. And then, they sit there, they contemplate, they're in their careers, they're feeling as though they're providing some major value and major service to their organization. And they may have some great clients, they may have some great people in their lives, and they may feel like they're part of a bigger wheel. They're part of a bigger thing that helps this go around and around. And they feel like they're providing major value and service. So they often don't want to get out of that. They don't want to get out of the hustle and bustle. As well, there's all the fears that come with that. Why do I want to retire early? I got to make sure I have enough money. What if I don't have enough money? Do we have enough savings? What if I live to 95 and we run out of cash? What's the health going to be like? As long as I keep working, all those things go on the back burner. A lot of these different thoughts go through a lot of retirees' minds, and so they often put it off, or would-be retirees. So they often end up putting off retirement. They're in the stride of their career, and they don't necessarily want to let go. For some people, it's even a power stroke. I knew a lot of people that were like that. Even one of my supervisors back many years ago was getting up there. He was in his mid-60s and clearly just did not want to let go. People asked him, hey, when are you going to leave? And he just never really wanted to ever commit, never wanted to say. He always kept putting it off and saying, you know what, maybe in a couple of years, I'll be doing something. But never really got around to it and never decided to retire until one day he was forced to. So I promised myself I was going to retire early enough. Granted, with that said, you all know how the beginning, and I'll share that link at the end of the video, about how I got to this point at 53 is where I actually ended up retiring. That wasn't my intended direction. That was not my intended age. Although that being said, I was planning on doing 55, still considered Freedom 55 or an early retirement nonetheless. Because I truly believe you've got to live your life to the fullest. You get caught up in the game of corporate, in the game of work, and you often lose sight of what the priorities are. Your own personal life and health and family and well-being and your own experiences. And experience is not sitting at a boardroom table. Experience is not plunking away a keyboard in your corporate office. Live life. Anyway, I vowed to make sure that retiring earlier was going to be on the radar for me. Another major regret that often pops up is a lot of these retirees just felt like they didn't spend enough of their savings earlier on in their retirement. We all know that, you get into retirement, you're a little scared, you're frugal. You have your savings, whether it's your 401k, your RRSPs, your pensions flowing, whether it's DB or whatever. You've got pensions, investments, savings, and hopefully some sort of diverse portfolio to help get you through. But the bottom line is quite often people are scared and worried about outspending themselves or outliving their available funds. And that is a very reasonable issue because a lot of people are fearful of that. I mean, with rising interest rates and, the cost of living increases, even if you have a decent sizable savings, what's it like in 5 years, 10 years from now? And often it's very unpredictable. So a lot of times people, for the sake of maintaining that predictability and maintaining that safety margin, they often underspend in their early years. Well, if you talk to many 70 and 80-year-olds, they often tell you that no, they wish they actually spent more in their good years when they actually could. Because by the time you hit your 70s and 80s, quite often what ends up happening, you slow down, not because you want to slow down, because your body slows down, your mind, the acuity, you're just not quite as sharp as you once were. So what that usually leaves you in a position where you're not spending the money later on in life. You're probably not eating as much. You don't have a young family to feed. You're literally on a very restricted budget, self-imposed realistically, because quite often you just don't need to spend the money. So you almost have to look at it from a ladder approach. You think of, okay, if you're retiring, think, in your 50s, 60s as one stage. That's sort of going to be your heavier spend, because that's likely where you're going to be still enjoying some of the mobility, some of the health benefits. You're still going to be enjoying life. You're still very active. So if you're retiring in your, say, mid 50s, you could still run 10 years at least with, what you'd consider a reasonable spend. Then you start scaling slightly. You can scale down, you're talking mid 60s to mid 70s. You scale back a bit. You're still probably going to do some travel. You're still going to do some things. You still might eat out the odd time, but you're likely scaling back. You're probably not spending as much. You don't have the energy, and you're likely not going to spend what you did maybe even 10 years earlier. Then as you wind up in your sort of latter years, whether you're in your sort of late 70s into your 80s, now, of course, you can layer down another level. You're probably even traveling less. In a lot of cases, you can't travel at all, and that's the bottom line, because now that takes us to the next stage of why you should ladder your spend and spend a little bit more, because many people regret that, is traveling. A lot of retirees wish, in fact, that they traveled more. Not everybody wants to travel. Absolutely fine with that. But the fact remains is, for people that often say, no, I never left my province. I never left Alberta. I never left my state. I never left this area. That is so heartbreaking to me, because I used to be like that. I grew up in a small community. I grew up in a smaller city, and certainly somewhat isolated, growing up in a farming community, and certainly had a farming background. We didn't aspire to be world travelers. But you know what? I met my wife. She's absolutely amazing. She introduced me to travel. So once we met, I would say in my early 20s, my first experience, our first trip together, we went to California. Got on a plane, and I literally could not take my eyes off of the window. Looking outside, I said, I need the window seat every single time, because I was just enamored in the overall, the experience, the flights, looking down below, the travel, a new experience. We went to San Francisco, one of our first trips, and I absolutely loved it. It was great. Everything, even from the gunshots that I heard in the middle of the night, because we were on one of the rough parts of town that we weren't aware of that when we booked our flights. But nonetheless, it's that adventure, it's that excitement, it's that new environment that just lights you up. And every time you travel somewhere new, it's a new, fresh experience, and I absolutely love it. And so many older retirees say they wish they had traveled more, because the sad reality is, why put off till tomorrow what you can do today? Because bottom line is, many people find themselves immediately cut off. That's all it takes is one major trip to the doctor visit, one major event, one unfortunate situation, one medical circumstance, and that's enough to have the doctor have you permanently sitting in your living room. It's an unfortunate case, but it happens all too often. And there's no, well, I'll plan into that, I'll phase into that. Sometimes it's just right now. So often, a lot of the older retirees find themselves, they're just not able to retire. They just, all of a sudden, a medical condition, something changed, maybe the budget, maybe they are dwindling out of money, whatever it is. Quite often, it's the decision because of some medical thing that was decided for them, why they, in fact, can't travel anymore. It's just so heartbreaking to me, because the world is a big, lovely place, and I've traveled so many places. I can honestly tell you, we've been all over the U.S. I love a lot of the American states, from Denver to California to Florida to Texas. I mean, I've been, you name it, New York, and I mean, I've been in all four corners and through and through and through. Been to Cuba and Dominican. I've been to Europe and, all over the place. Jamaica and Mexico and Hawaii, like the list goes on. And I can't tell you how exciting it is every time you get on the plane and go somewhere new. Anyway, enough about that. The bottom line is, many of them regret not traveling, and I fully intend to continue traveling. My wife and I, we talk about it all the time. As a matter of fact, I know she's got something brewing. There's something more lined up. We're probably going to be traveling here very, very soon. But another element, and I want to bring this to touch, and of course, spending when you're younger. And I want to go back on that one, revisit that one conversation about, I'll be perfectly transparent here. What had happened was, I was in the middle of my my, a corporate game. Obviously, I had ordered a car. Everybody knows I love my cars. I'm just a softie for cars, for fun cars. That's always been the way I am. I mean, I run car channels. I've always had fun cars in my garage. And I know I did a video a while back about how these cars are kind of pointless. And they really are. They don't make you happy. They don't make you happy if you're buying a car for a big house, if you're buying it to impress other people. We talked about that. But a big part of if you're going to spend it in your earlier years, because that's when you're going to enjoy it. So before I knew I was going to be walked, I actually put a big deposit down on a car. I'm going to be perfectly frank. Big deposit, non-refundable, and the car was on order. The car is still coming. You know what? The reality is, without losing a crap of ton of money, the car's coming, and I expect it very, very soon. Likely in a few weeks, I likely will have that new toy. Now, as I say, a car in itself, a house in itself cannot make you happy. We have to find that happiness from within. And if we enjoy these things and these elements, and I know many people, found my video a little contrary that, cars can make people that are car people happy. That part I agree with. But as I also talked about, if you're trying to be one of the Joneses and you're trying to live up to others' expectations, you're never going to meet that. And who cares what other people think anyway? So when I bought my car, it's only because I've always aspired. I was motivated, incentivized. I had those talks with my dad, and one day I said, we're going to have a car like that. Now that was referring to a different type of car, but since then, I just found the charm of these vehicles very interesting. So you're going to want to stick around and find out for that. That is one of those things that I will hope to enjoy in the first bunch of years, of course, the first few years of my retirement. As I transition into my middle years and my wife starts to get into retirement, and then we'll likely be traveling even more. That's the long-term plan. But either way, enjoying your earlier years in retirement is something that many retirees that are older just neglected. They didn't do enough of, and they truly wish they could revisit that. Another major regret by a lot of retirees is they don't have hobbies. They retired from something, they retired from their job, and that's all they really knew. That is really what defined them. There was that, that border that said, hey, this is Dr. So-and-so, or, whatever, or officer corporal. It doesn't matter, but they live that. And so many retirees wish they hadn't necessarily lived entirely for their career and started building a hobby as something that they really do have passion for, that they can transition out into retirement, because you don't want to you don't want to leave your career and retire from something and not retire to something else. You want to have something that you can enjoy. I know for me, already the intentions are, as I already mentioned, I do have a car lined up, and I do plan to fully engage in that, get involved more in the car clubs. Again, a big part of this is the social atmosphere, to sit around, chat with like-minded people that like other cars like that. Another part of that, of course, is just, spitballish, go for these drives. In some cases, take the car to the racetrack, because I know there's lots of these clubs, and when you're part of this particular car maker, it's very, very strongly encouraged that you get involved in racing, club racing, and you get more involved in the auto racing perspective. And certainly that's a big element that I want to get more involved with as I get into my early years in retirement. And after I get the car, that's going to be one of the hobbies. I haven't talked about this extensively enough, but I want to bring it to light, as well as what I'm doing right now. And I promised you this side hustle is in fact a great way to close a gap. But this has been one of those motivating factors to keep me going, get me out of bed in the morning. And that's been a big element and a big help in transitioning me from the corporate game to my own, I guess you could call it self-employment. But I am absolutely loving this. It's a hobby, it's a game, it generates a little bit of revenue, so it's a triple threat. It's a win, and you've got to have something that motivates you, a hobby, something fun, a side hustle, something that gets you excited. I also want to take up more bike riding. I mentioned that already previously too. A couple of you offered up some great options for these electric bikes, and I want to get maybe an electric assist bike too, where I can put on some significant miles, because I want to do more exploring, I want to do more bike riding, and I do plan to do more of that. So that takes us as well, where another regret that a lot of retirees have is that they just never looked after their health. They got into their careers, they didn't spend enough time focusing on health. They get in the career, they're going out for those dinners, meals with, whether it's customers, business partners, what have you, or even just generally get in a bad habit of not necessarily taking care of their health, not exercising, spending too much time behind the desk, burning the candle at both ends, working, staying up late, not eating properly, not getting the exercise, and it all adds up to one bad place. Why do you think the majority of heart attacks seem to afflict people in their early 50s or 50? That's because you've spent all those years at your work or your job with high levels of stress, not eating properly, not getting as much exercise as you should, and then it all just builds up into one bad scenario. So a lot of retirees wish they not only took care of their health before retirement, which is critically important because you're setting the stage for your health, for your longevity, but as well while you're in retirement. More focus on maybe exercise, bike riding. I've lost a bunch of weight. We were watching the scales. My wife was looking at it last night and kind of curiously interested in, the amount of weight I shed. And I did it because I've been brutally exercising, doing exercise, lots of walking, lots of talking. I've certainly been watching the amount I eat and the types of food I eat. I've been doing more of a carnivore experience, certainly shedding a lot more of that carbohydrates, avoiding the breads and a lot of that type of food. And realistically, just living a better food overall, and certainly a lot more exercise. 15,000, 10, 15, 20,000 steps a day, generally trying to be a lot more active. And a lot of retirees have regretted that. If they could have changed one major thing, it's their health. Because if you don't have health, you don't have wealth. And realistically, everybody, those are the five major elements of regret by a lot of older retirees. And that's why I want to nip these in the bud right now, get ahead of it. And that's my plan for the next 40 years. Well, with all of that said, everybody, again, as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Please do drop a line. And most importantly, if you haven't already subscribed, please do. If you want to hear about the job, work, life, career balance, and transition into retirement, and why, in fact, I retired early, you're going to want to follow the whole story. So do subscribe. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.